Welcome back to the Fruitful Three Show. I'm your host, Isaiah, and joined again, Levi.
Yeah!
Woo! And today we're diving into a topic that hits pretty close to home for a lot of us. The 7 deadly sins. And trust me, these aren't just ancient concepts. They're alive and kicking in our everyday lives, so grab your favorite drink, sit back, and let's explore how pride, greed, lust, envy, gluttony, wrath, and sloth shows up in our daily routines and how they can become addictive and what we can do about it. Did any of those register, like, really just hit you at home?
Yeah.
Yeah. How about you guys? I know some, when reading it hits, and you don't have to share, but the word that hits you, it's probably where you need to put some work in,
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents. Before we start off, we have merch.
Oh yeah, buddy.
So, this isn't the podcast, but I got the ice beats going. This is the podcast. Yeah, I got all t-shirts, buddy.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, look at that.
There you go.
Look at that. Beauty.
You know, I forgot my fancy bikini to help you show this off with, right?
Oh yeah, that would maybe some Daisy Dukes.
Oh yeah. No, that's Elijah's category.
Yeah, that's an inside joke if you don't get it.
Yeah. Well, we might bring that up some. That might get brought up in a later episode, if somehow that story relates to anything we're talking about.
Yeah. Anyway, stay cozy, stylish, and happy this season with our must-have collection. Find everything you need to keep warm while looking your best at iceentertainment.net/drip. Don't wear comfort, live it. Shop now and treat yourself to the ultimate feel-good vibes.
Yeah, buddy.
Now, let's get into our segments. When most people hear about the 7 deadly sins, they probably think about biblical stories, saints, or even more medieval paintings of demons. But let's face it, these sins aren't just ancient relics. They show up in our everyday lives in ways that we might not even realize. So let's break down how each of them might look in your day-to-day routine.
Okay, so before we break them down into our day-to-day routine, I dove into the origin. So like you mentioned Christianity, right? So originally you can't find you can find each one of these in the Bible and how everyone deals with it, but you can't actually pinpoint that sin. It doesn't say greed. It does you know what I mean? It talks about several sins. So it's where exactly did the 7, how did someone actually categorize these into these areas?
Well, from what I have experienced from reading the Bible, it's just taking the overall story and breaking it down of how they sinned.
Yeah.
And then you just compare and contrast with every other Bible story.
Yeah. So the 7 deadly sins, also known as the capital vices or cardinal sins, have their origins in early Roman Catholic teachings. Through their development as a concept was a gradual process influenced by both theology and moral philosophy. The concepts can be traced back to the 4th century, primarily to the writings of a Christian monk named Evagrius Ponticus. Evagrius categorized 8 primary evil thoughts or temptations, which he believed led to spiritual downfall. These were gluttony, or gluttony, however you want to pronounce that, fornication, avarice, sadness, anger, acedia, a kind of spiritual sloth, vainglory, and pride. However, it was Pope Gregory I in the late 6th century who redefined the this list. Sorry, I can't talk. Consolidating some of these temptations and reducing them to 7: pride, envy, wrath, sloth, greed, gluttony, and lust. Gregory's version was more streamlined and aligned with the moral teaching of the time, making it easier for people to grasp and follow. The 7 deadly sins became entrenched in Christian doctrine throughout their association with the concept of moral imperfection and their role in the human struggle against sin. Over the centuries, these sins were frequently referenced in medieval sermons, literature, and art, contributing to their prominence in Western religious culture. In the 13th century, Thomas Aquinas, one of the most influential Christian philosophers and theologians, further cemented the 7 deadly sins as a central part of Christian moral theology in his work Summa Theologica. He argued that these sins were not only morally corrupting on their own, but also gave rise to other vices, making them particularly dangerous. Throughout history, the 7 deadly sins were not just theological concepts, but also served as a basis for moral instruction and as themes for art, literature, and culture representations. Most notably in works like Dante's Divine Comedy and various medieval paintings and carvings. Over time, the 7 deadly sins found their way into secular culture, influenced modern works of fiction, movies, and even video games, where they continue to serve as a symbolic representation of human flaws and moral struggles. One of the most recent movies out there is Shazam. I don't know if there's any actually more recent than that, but Shazam talks about the 7 deadly sins in one of the most recent movies I can think of where the most deadly sins are brought up.
Mm-hmm.
If you actually know one that's more up to date than that, then more power to you.
I can't think of any on my on here. It's all dull up here.
Yeah,
it's all dull.
That's the history of it. Started at Roman Catholic and monks, and eventually moved into art, and now it's kind of like a mainstream media thing.
Mm-hmm. So now let's get into the breakdowns. Let's start with pride. It's a little voice that says, I'm better than this, or I deserve more. I'm better than you, because I got money. It's not just about thinking you're the king of the world. It's about the inner belief that you don't need anyone else's input. Ever caught yourself refusing to take constructive criticism at work or showing off on social media? Yeah, that's pride at work.
Okay, so that's actually a pretty good definition. Now, so what I did is I took kind of a different route. I figured out what the Roman Catholic Church and how the monks kind of describe these, right? So vainglory or pride is kind of like that vice that makes us check our like counts on social media. Well, I don't know who wrote this one, but vainglory is where we seek human acclaim. In contrast, pride is a sin where I essentially take spiritual credit for what I've done instead of ascribing one's good deeds to God. Yeah, the first part
You just
it's all right. I just took the quote unquote, and I didn't realize there was a modern
the breakdown.
Yeah, I didn't realize there was an actual modern part in there. Oops.
Have you had pride lately? Do you that?
I don't know. I sometimes do.
Sometimes, yeah.
I don't really deal with pride that often. A lot of time is where pride comes in is when I know I'm right and I know you're wrong, and it's and you can't get it through your head, and it's that's kind of where because it's
yeah, that's kind of the same way. I'm gonna prove you wrong.
Yep.
Mindset, and I'm like, if I burn, I burn. If I don't, I don't, you know. At least I attempted to do it, you know, the way I wanted to do it, to see if I fail or not.
Yeah.
You know, I don't mind failing. So, I mean, I'm not trying to be prideful when I do it. I just, you know, just want to fail on my own, you know.
I'm trying to think of what that actually, first attempt in learning. Isn't that what?
Trial and error.
Isn't that technically what fail stands for, is first attempt in learning?
I think.
Or don't quote me on that, guys. Really don't, because
you don't know.
It's like back here in the back of my head, but I don't actually know without looking it up. But there is an actual acronym for the word fail, and it's very, very similar, if not what I just said.
Mm-hmm. So, moving on to greed. This one might not be as obvious as it seems, but greed isn't always about wanting $1 million. It's the constant craving for more success, more recognition, more stuff. You know, hoarding opportunities, taking credit for others' ideas, or even over shopping for things you don't need. Sound familiar?
It does. Because there's some times where you want stuff.
I've spent way too much money already this year. I'm gonna be real honest. I don't think it's greed. I just think I'm just stupid with money at this time of year.
So Gregory the Great wrote that avarice, or greed, is not just a desire for wealth, but for honors and high positions. Neuhauser says, so he was aware that things that we would consider as immaterial could also be the object of avarice. While some of the sins may vary between lists, avarice or greed shows up on all of them. Like, we're going to cover this a lot more in this topic as we go down the list, but from that definition, greed kind of blends into everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like you can lust is like a off branch of greed. Pride is an off branch of greed. I think, this is just my opinion, I'm just gonna say it, I think economics really drove greed home, because like economics is really the biggest issue in the world, as it pushed everyone kind of like to the poor or the rich, and then the poor was like, I don't want to be poor no more, so they learned how to take greed to become rich from the rich people that wrote books. And now everything costs money instead of fair trades, and like a lot of your happiness and just the small pleasures in life went away because of everyone wanting more and taking greed and going off on that, you know, if that makes sense. I'm scatterbrained sometimes when I'm have deep thoughts, you know. Moving on to lust, which we just talked was an off branch of greed. And no, this isn't just about physical attraction. It's the pursuit of anything that promises pleasure. So it's not just about sex. It's anything that you really desire in life, you know. Ever find yourself caught up in distractions like excessive online content or letting your desires override meaningful connection with others? That's lust creeping in, sometimes in ways we don't even expect.
All right, so the definition I have is lust is so broad that it encompasses sex outside of heterosexual marriage, as well as sex inside of heterosexual marriage. The Catechism defines lust as a disordered desire for or inordinate enjoyment of sexual pleasure. Sexual pleasure is morally disordered when sought for itself isolated from its procreative and unitive purposes. Of all the sins, this is probably the one on which public opinion has changed the most. Although the Catholic Church officially opposes birth control and same-sex marriage, polls by Gallup and the Pew Research Center show that the majority of Catholics in the United States believe the Church should permit birth control and that same-sex marriage should remain legal.
There's a Bible story. I think it's in Genesis. I forget what the guy's name is. His brother was like the leader, the big dog, and he was married. Well, the brother.
You're talking about Bathsheba?
No. That's Uzziah, right? And
I don't remember.
And Daniel, right? Not Daniel, David.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm talking. This is Genesis. So the brother, I forget what his name is too. I just thought of this. He was married, and he died. You know, and the old times, the brother would come in and take the wife as a widow, or so she wouldn't be a widow. And well, the brother that was still living didn't find her real attractive, and he would spill the sperm, he would pull out pretty much, and let it hit the floor. And God said, nah, and he took him away. He's like, nah, that's a sin. So, I mean, that's just something that popped up in my head.
So now that we're talking about biblical stories here, you talk about lust, right? Abraham. No, was it Abraham? I was on a... Man, it's like when the Nazis bombed Pearl Harbor, man.
Yeah. Shut up. He's on a roll.
No, I think it was Abraham. But
Abraham was the one that tried to kill his son Isaac.
Yeah, but didn't he sleep with his maid?
There's a lot of people that slept with their maids.
But the deal is basically the wife knew that she could not have kids and kids.
Yeah, and they talked about it, and she's like, just go.
Yeah,
go after the maid.
Just go boink the maid. Yeah.
Yeah, that one. Yeah.
Is it bad we know all these stories, but by the time we actually need to like drop them, we
fumble the ball?
We're like Mark Andrews.
Right?
Sorry.
Right?
That hit a little home, didn't it?
Yeah, that's fine.
Oh well, don't worry. Apparently the refs got Chiefs 8 sacks during a game too, so and a miss and a horrible Houston special team. So I still don't know how.
Yeah. Next up is envy. Oof. This is a tough one. This one's tough. This one's a tough one. Jeez, I cannot speak. Tongue twisters out of tongue twisters. Envy is the nasty little feeling when you see someone else get a promotion, a new car, or even beautiful Instagram post, and suddenly you're questioning everything about your own life. It's comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's highlight reel, right? It's natural to feel a twinge of envy, but when it takes root, it can really mess with your peace. I'm jealous of you. Get to sit here, be all cool and everything, and all calm.
Pop my collar. I should probably actually do that. I honestly think envy and greed are very, very similar.
Yes.
So, Evagrius doesn't have envy in his list, but Evagrius did include sadness. Sadness is closely related to envy because envy concerns really two things. One is joy at another's misfortune, and the other is sorrow at the fortune of someone else.
This is where the be careful what you wish for comes in. You know.
Yep.
10-4.
Yeah. 10-4, rubber ducky.
Anything you want to add to envy?
No. I just find it cool how. No, it is.
No, you do it all the time. Like,
oh, I do it?
Yeah, because I'll be editing and it's like, no, and then you go off on a rant and it's like, okay.
Light bulb comes on, dude.
Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. Anyway.
No, I was just saying, it's kind of cool, like, how some of these, like, from the original, like, Roman Catholic theology, how these have kind of, I mean, because like I said, envy was never on there. It was originally sadness. That was all I was going to say, is it's kind of cool how some of these have transformed into different words throughout time.
Let's not forget gluttony. And this one doesn't just mean food. It's overindulgence of anything, binge watching shows, endless scrolling, or eating when you're not hungry. It's that need for instant gratification. We all do it, but the trick is realizing when it starts to controlling you. Yeah.
Early Christian theologians understood gluttony to include drinking too much alcohol and desiring too much fine food in addition to overeating. If I just simply have to have the most delicate food, the most expensive food, that can be a form of gluttony. Basically, I mean, that's basically what you said. So
what's a recent thing of gluttony you have had lately, if any?
I don't know. I mean, I was on a really, really big chocolate craving like a couple days ago.
That could just mean your body needs magnesium.
I don't know, but you were talking about desiring food. Like, I don't know. Nothing else sounded good except for it had to be like chocolate.
I will say Instagram, because even when I don't want to be on it, I'm on it. I sit there and I procrastinate, and it's like I have a list of things to do. This is not important.
Well, if you want to go that route, every time I'm bored, I find myself scrolling through Facebook, and I don't even know why. Like, it's like, why? Like,
Yeah.
This is just, no offense to anybody out there, but it's dumb political stuff that Trump did this, Biden's so much better, we're all dead.
We'll see what happens.
Trump's Satan. I've actually seen that post more than once. Trump's the devil.
Yeah.
I mean, if Trump's really the devil, I mean, my question is if Trump's really the devil, wouldn't you think the first 4 years he would have, like, done something to prove it?
Or did he sign the deal after he left office? You never know. Once you sell your soul, you sell your soul. The devil is the devil, but he has to work through people to be the devil. Which brings us to our next one, wrath. Yeah, that's right. Anger can be powerful, but it can also be dangerous. Maybe it's road rage, got a lot of those. Or snapping at your partner for something small. Or even just holding grudges. Remember that time I just still hate you for it? No, I'm kidding.
Cool.
Wrath often makes us...
Which time?
All of them. Wrath often makes us feel justified in our emotions, but it leads to destruction both in our relationships and in our own hearts.
So anger can be a normal reaction to injustice, but wrath is something more. The Catechism says that if anger reaches the point of a deliberate desire to kill or seriously wound a neighbor, it is gravely against charity. It is a mortal sin. Medieval artists depicted wrath with scenes of people fighting as well as scenes of suicide.
Interesting.
I don't know, I can tell you the other day I had a bunch of pepped up road rage.
Yeah.
When people want to put down the highway at like 30 miles an hour.
Right? Like, and then you got incoming traffic and you can't pass them. And it's like, just speed up, please. I understand you have your own right to go as fast as you want, but 50, come on, just 50.
I almost really wanted to ram a semi into the back of the bus the other day because his bus jumped out onto Highway 15. Well, yeah, Highway 15 there. And literally, it runs the stop sign, and the next block it turns. And I'm trying to like slow down, go up a hill in a semi. I'm like, I was about ready to just say screw it and just ram it.
I always get up like real close where there's only like a foot of space to really like, well, because once you look in your rearview mirror, you're like, oh crap, and then you hammer the gas, and it's always fun to watch them do that, see how fast they can go. But yeah, road rage.
Yeah.
And lastly, sloth. Laziness or avoidance. That's not a question mark. That was actually a period. It's procrastinating on things that matter. Binging Netflix when you should be working on your goals, or avoiding physical or emotional responsibilities. Sloth may not seem like a big deal, but it's a silent killer of productivity and growth. Also Instagram.
So, sloth has come to mean laziness today, but for early Christian theologians, it meant a lack of care for performing spiritual duties. Although Gregory didn't include sloth in his list of 7 sins. He did mention it when talking about the sin of sadness or melancholy, writing that melancholy causes slothfulness in fulfilling the commands. When Aquinas replaced sadness with sloth in his list of capital sins, he maintained a connecting between the two. Sloth is a kind of sadness, he wrote, whereby a man becomes sluggish in spiritual exercises because they weary the body.
I love exercising. I love just getting my weights and just, curls for the girls,
Yeah.
Getting the biceps or, the biceps all sore, or go in and do some triceps, But leg day really kills me, and I don't like leg day.
I've been in, I wouldn't say a sloth mood the last week or so, but I've had no ambition trying to just find the ounce of motivation to go do something like the last week and a half.
Well, it's kind of been cold, and when it's cold, I've realized I don't like doing anything.
I think you might have a fair point to that. I mean, I got stuff I need to get done out in the garage, and I just know.
Yeah, I'm like always outside every day, out in the cold, and it's like I get home and I just want to be warm, Benefits of working out in the cold.
No.
Now here's where things get even more interesting. These 7 deadly sins aren't just about behaviors. They can become addictive. And once they take hold, they can control us. Almost like a bad habit that's hard to break. But why are they so addictive? Here's why. Okay? Here's why. Each of these sins taps into something deep within us physiologically. Gosh, dang, bro. Psychologically, there we go. Psycho. Not physical. Psychologically, biologically, and even socially. They satisfy deep desires in the moment, and when we get that rush, our brain releases dopamine, that the feel-good chemical that keeps us coming back for more. Yeah. Take pride, for example. Every time we get validated, whether it's through likes on social media or recognition at work, dopamine releases. It makes us feel great, but over time we start craving that external validation more and more. That's where we call got a big head, ego.
My note on pride for this topic is pride, often considered the root of all sin, involves an inflated sense of self-importance, as Isaiah just mentioned, ego. People consumed by pride become addicted to validation, constantly seeking admiration and recognition from others. This addiction to self-esteem and external praise leads them to increasingly unhealthy levels of arrogance and self-centeredness.
I bet a lot of people are saying, Isaiah's prideful, because I am very, I like being alone. That's what I like to be. And people will probably call me self-centered because I don't like doing nothing unless I benefit from it. I guess that's pride, but it is what it is. Greed works similarly. Jeez, I really can't speak right now. Every time we get something new or achieve more wealth or status, it feels good for a moment, but soon we want more, and that desire grows. This continuous craving for more is addicted because our brain is conditioned to believe that the next thing will make us happy.
All right, greed is similarly addictive as the desire for wealth and material possessions grows insatiable. Each acquisition only temporarily satisfies, leading to the individual to chase after more, pushing them further away from contentment. This perpetual hunger for more wealth or status can consume a person's thoughts and actions, forming a cycle of unfulfilled longing.
Wow.
So our for the most part, our definitions are
Pretty close.
Pretty close.
Pretty close. Then there's lust. Whether it's physical attraction or the pursuit of instant gratification, the pleasures.
Oh.
You got a point. You got a point. The pleasure we can get from indulging in lust can create a strong cycle. Brain releases dopamine when we seek pleasure, which makes it harder to resist the next time we're tempted.
Lust, too, is a deeply addictive sin. The craving for sexual satisfaction can easily turn into an obsession, diminishing the ability to form genuine emotional connections. Instead of fostering healthy relationships, lust distorts intimacy into a transactional pursuit of instant gratification, leaving the person seeking constant fulfillment without ever reaching true satisfaction.
I was thinking of the song Satisfaction.
Hey, no
Satisfaction. That's maybe that's why you wrote the song.
Yeah, and in today's, I would have to say, in today's world, lust is probably by far the biggest, out of these deadly sins, the biggest one we see, because no matter where you go, no matter what you do,
well, like lust is like also closely related to envy and greed, you know, because you're taking what you want for that quick satisfaction. And you're jealous of everybody else because of they got the satisfaction that you're craving, and so you're gonna do something like OnlyFans to get it.
Yeah. Well, what I was getting at is, like, you look at like media these days, right? Go watch any movie out there, any modern day world. Like, now, if it's like specifically a religious movie, then this probably doesn't pertain to it. But go watch any movie out there, and you either got like nudity in it, there's either a sex scene, there's some hot chick in a bikini. Like, I mean,
it's like all the movies. And I was thinking about this, like every movie has a girl and a guy, and the guy's crushing on the girl. And at the end of the thing, most of the time, they get the girl.
Yeah.
Unless you're Blade, you know. Unless you're Blade, you don't get the girl.
Unless, of course, in reality, you can be crushing on a girl and she tells you she's not your type.
Ooh. See,
that's a sting to the ego right there. Oh.
I'm out of your league. I play for the Yankees, you play for the Mets. Okay, moving on to envy. Oh, this one is sneaky. When we see someone else succeed or have something we desire, we feel a surge of desire to get it for ourselves. And the cycle continues. Envy can also drive us to compete with others for validation, making it even harder to break free.
So envy fosters dissatisfaction and resentment toward others who seem to have what one desires. It begins with a simple longing but quickly turns into an obsession, creating feelings of inferiority and a constant craving for the possessions, relationships, or achievements of others. This envy erodes self-worth as the person becomes fixated on what others have rather than appreciating their own life.
Gluttony and the addiction to overindulgence also go hand in hand. Whether it's food, drink, or binge watching TV, we're seeking pleasure. And when we get that instant reward, it becomes a habit. This type of indulgence can become a way to cope with emotions, and over time, it's easy to lose control.
Gluttony manifests in an excessive desire for food, drink, or other physical indulgences. What begins as a desire for pleasure can quickly spiral into a compulsive need to consume, whether for emotional comfort or habit. The cycle of overeating or overindulging becomes self-perpetuating as the momentary relief provides a false sense of satisfaction while increasing the craving for more.
Have you noticed a common theme here?
They're all related.
Well, yes, but do you know the key words of I mean, you've said them like 100 times.
Yeah, they're overindulging.
Pleasure.
Yeah.
And satisfaction. Satisfaction.
I was thinking of like habits and like where they form a habit, or they form.
Well, yeah, they form habits, but like pleasure and satisfaction is also one of the biggest ones. Anyway, what were you saying before I?
Oh, so I was gonna kind of bounce off of that too. Is like you think about like porn, for example.
Mhm.
Like, right? Like in today's world, a lot of people talk about addictions, right?
Mhm.
And they always think it's like drugs or alcohol, right?
Mhm.
Honestly, one of the biggest themes in our culture right now is porn addiction, and nobody like wants to talk about it. No one wants to discuss it. But the deal is like there's a lot of people use porn as an outing. Like sometimes you're out of my league, they feel like you could go watch porn and you could feel like you're in their league or stuff like that. And then like next thing you know, the whole gluttony, because you get addicted to it, and then next thing you know you have a habit, and then next thing you know it's a coping mechanism,
And you're binge watching it.
yep, and then next thing you know it slowly. So that's one of those things that like people don't, like I said, is when people talk about addiction, it's like drugs or alcohol.
Mhm.
No one wants to talk about like the number one addiction in America right now, and that is porn.
Well, addiction everywhere.
Yeah.
Which I also think has something to do with food and how like even Europe and stuff, they have like strict rules on food, and then in America we have like all the dyes and stuff. That's just my theory, I don't know if I talked about it.
It is. I agree. Food is actually. I don't know how I want to word this, but there's a lot of things in food nowadays. They're putting like certain chemicals and stuff in food, and it either one doesn't make you feel good, makes you lazy, like so on and so forth, and like it has, how do I want to word it, weird side effects
Mm-hmm.
in a sense. But like if you look at it, you go back in like even 30, 40, 50 years ago, and none of these like health problems were a problem. Like I was watching a video the other day, right? Did you know cholesterol ratings back in the day, 350 was actually, like 350 was the average cholesterol rating for a human body. Doctors now tell you that's 190, which that's actually cutting off fatness to your brain to actually produce your brain to function properly.
And all your other organs feed off of cholesterol too. And so then that's what, like, it's a cause of what leads to dementia, because cholesterol is what helps protect the brain from metals and the sugars and everything else coming in.
And the other thing, while
Regulates the insulin.
we're talking about food, you can go to Taco Bell and get yourself like 10 burritos, and by the time you get done with those 10 burritos, you're still not full. But if you go and actually eat like a steak with like real blueberries and carrots and stuff like that, you might only eat like half of your dinner and be full. Like that to me is just crazy to think about. You put like triple the amount of calories in your body and you're still ain't full, and you put like a third of that in your body with real food and you end up full.
Yes, that's what happens. It's a joke.
So all we're talking about like gluttony, right?
Yeah.
So I think honestly, speaking of the whole Taco Bell and real food thing, I think they're putting chemicals to get you addictive.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't fill you up. So then you're like, oh, I need to eat more. I need to eat more. I need to eat more.
So you're spending more money because they're greedful and they want more money, and then you end up creating this problem, and guess what? You got to go to the doctors, and guess what? Doctors get paid and greed again, and guess what? Then they send you pills, and guess what? All the pharmacists and all the people hired.
Okay, Joe Rogan.
Get paid because of greed, because we're money, and y'all just peasants under me,
Okay, Joe Rogan.
Yep. That's anything else you'd like to add to Glenn?
No. And if nobody gets the whole Joe Rogan joke, go look up Joe Rogan food industry. You'll understand it at that point.
All right.
I know I just did it again, didn't I?
Well, I honestly wasn't paying attention. Wrath is another big one. Anger can actually give us a temporary feeling of control and satisfaction. You know, like you watch a movie and you watch the guy beat someone up, so you beat someone up because you're just so hyped, and you're like, yeah, and you start yelling in their face, like, yeah, take that, you know, and calling them names, you know, that satisfaction. When we lash out, we often feel a release of pent-up tension. But of course, that rush is short-lived, and soon we're back in the cycle, angry and upset again.
Wrath is driven by an overwhelming desire for vengeance or the need to impose power over others. Anger feeds upon itself, creating a toxic environment where grudges and conflicts only escalate, making it harder for the individual to find peace. This cycle of bitterness and hatred becomes an addictive release, reinforcing negative emotions and preventing emotional healing.
And lastly, sloth. Avoiding responsibility or being lazy can give us temporary relief from stress or pressure, but it quickly becomes a habit. The brain learns that avoiding hard work or responsibilities bring an immediate comfort, which is why it can be so tough to break out of.
So, sloth represents the addiction to avoidance, in which an individual becomes addicted to laziness or a lack of productivity. The temporary comfort of idleness can transform into a constant yearning to avoid responsibility, causing a downward spiral in which the individual grows increasingly detached from their goals and potential.
Would you like to add anything to that segment?
So this is just the final note that I have. These 7 sins are not isolated behaviors, but interconnected forces that work together to ensure individuals in cycles of addiction. The more an individual indulges in any of these sins, the deeper they become entrenched in their addictive behavior, with each sin reinforcing the others. In this way, the 7 deadly sins act as powerful forces that can shape an individual's life, pulling them further away from virtuous living and personal fulfillment.
So if you think, oh, I can, just dive into one, well, one will lead to another, and that one will lead to a different one, and then all of a sudden, and then you're running, trying to break the chain that's on you,
And the other thing, too, is a lot of people don't realize this. It could easily start with, like, one little trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it could be the littlest thing that you think about. No, well, like, it could be something, like I said, it could be something as simple as let's say as a kid, you tried your best on a test and you got a B or a C, and then your parents scold you for not getting an A. I mean, right there and then, something right there could easily click inside that kid's head, and next thing you know, he's in a downward spiral. So really, really think about how you...
Because then once he gets a 100 and A, he's going to be prideful.
Yep.
And he's going to be like, this mom,
See, so a lot of this, and the reason I'm mentioning some of this stuff is so Jeff and I had a conversation a couple weeks ago. A lot of this is you don't really think about some of this stuff. You just kind of like, some of the stuff you don't, like I said, you just kind of bury it, and you just, the whole saying of sticks and stones may break my bones, but words never hurt me. Words are a lot more powerful than what people think.
Mm-hmm.
So there are things out there that I never even thought of until Jeff and I had this deep conversation. There's stuff that I never even realized that actually had an impact on my life. Mm-hmm. And now the fact that I have a kid, I don't want my kid going down the same trail that I did. I would rather learn from that and be like, okay, how did that affect me? To where now how can I prevent that from affecting her?
It's always funny. People make fun of me because, like, I don't really, like, conversate much, like, out in public. And people always make fun of me for being, like, the quiet kid and stuff. And it's just, it goes to the Bible verse only the fool talks.
Yeah.
And that's where I kind of live, because sometimes I want to say something and it's like, nah, I'm a just leave it. I'm gonna be wise about this.
No, I'll be honest here. I'm the complete opposite. Like, I'm like the extrovert. I like being out in public. I like being the life of the party, so on and so forth. But as Isaiah was saying, there is truth to that too. Is you gotta some things you don't gotta tell people. You just gotta bite your tongue and do it. And then so if you're an introvert, right, find ways to become an extrovert, or vice versa, because there is somewhere a happy.
Oh, I'm an extrovert.
Oh,
I don't care if people talk to me or not. I'll talk back. But like, yeah.
Well, but you understand what I'm telling the audience here is that some people just want to
stay inside
and hide out.
It's scary out there. Life is hard.
Life will knock you to your knees if you let it.
Especially if you're on the right path. Life gets harder if you're on the right path. It becomes easy if you're on the wrong.
Think about Noah, for example. Noah was one of those guys that he followed what God wanted him to do, and then God trusted him to build an ark. And everybody laughed and mocked him and told him he was dumb and stupid. And who was the guy that ended up surviving a flood? Noah. Like Isaiah said, is you're gonna probably get some ridicule if you're. And I'm not saying you have to be religious by any means, but usually if you're doing the right thing, someone's gonna find something wrong with you and try to like beat you down to their level.
Now here's the thing. These sins just don't show up at one time. This is kind of repeating of what Levi just said. They tend to overlap. You might feel envy toward a coworker's success, leading to wrath, resentment, and sloth, giving up on improving your own performance. It's a vicious cycle that can be tough to break. So how do we break the cycle? Well, the first step is awareness. If you are aware, that is a very powerful. It takes a minute to become aware, but when you become aware, that is very powerful. I'm recognizing that these behaviors just don't happen in biblical stories. They're right here, in this time, in this space, in our lives. And once we see them for what they are, we can actively choose to replace them with something better, like me being a sloth and going to the actual gym. Like replacing pride with humility, greed with generosity, and patience instead of wrath. It's all about balance and making better choices.
So this is my notes I had on. So the 7 deadly sins, pride, greed, wrath, envy, lust, gluttony, and sloth, often overlap in ways that reflect the complexity of human behavior. Each sin can feed into another, creating a cycle of negativity that is hard to break. For example, pride, the belief in one's superiority, can lead to envy when one sees others possessing what they desire, thus breeding resentment. Similarly, greed for wealth can turn into wrath when someone perceives an obstacle to obtaining it. Or lust can arise from a deep-seated need for validation, which can also be rooted in pride. Sloth, often understood as laziness or indifference, can overlap with other sins like greed or wrath. A person might neglect responsibilities out of laziness, only to feel anger or frustration when they face the consequences of their inaction. Gluttony, typically associated with overindulgence in food or drink, can have deeper psychological roots, such as an attempt to fill emotional voids, which may overlap with feelings of lust or even sloth when one becomes lethargic or indifferent to their well-being. Addressing these overlapping sins requires self-awareness and intentionality. The first step is recognizing how they manifest in our lives. Mindfulness practices can help increase awareness of our thoughts and behaviors, allowing us to catch ourselves before negative patterns take hold. Regular reflection and self-examination, perhaps through journaling or meditation, can also reveal the root causes of these sins. For instance, understanding that anger or wrath might stem from insecurity or pride can allow us to address the deeper issues. Another important step to cultivating virtues that counteract the sins, for example, practicing humility can help counteract pride, and cultivating contentment can diminish greed. Acts of kindness and generosity can reduce envy, while mindfulness around our physical and emotional needs can combat gluttony and lust. Furthermore, adopting a disciplined, balanced approach to life can help prevent the lethargy that comes with sloth. Ultimately, these virtues provide a framework for positive growth and transformation, allowing us to break the cycle of the 7 deadly sins. So I realize some of that still overlapped to what you said, but
And that was long.
yeah, it was long.
It was long.
But it was detailed.
It was detailed.
So you just kind of summed yours up in one giant paragraph. I actually broke mine down.
Yeah. So is there anything you would like to add before we end this episode?
So while we were talking about like that, so like they mentioned journaling.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing you could do is if you could reach out to a counselor.
Mm-hmm.
I know some of you are not religious, but I know pastors usually do free counseling sessions. I also know if you are a military member, they have military personnel that will do free counseling sessions for military members, as long as you can like show some, I mean, you could have been in service 20 years ago, but as long as you still have some form that you served, they will provide that service to you. So those are another way. Another way is like if you are religious, like just sitting down and reading your Bible. Like I know it's not gonna like 100% help. Like I understand it's not gonna like 100% help, and it's not gonna be an overnight thing. But at the end of it, like when you actually come full circle, it will be 100% helpful. But like I said, don't expect like a 100% changed person overnight. There's little things you can do, like Isaiah mentioned, is you could, I mean, for certain things you could go to a gym. I mean, just start working out. Something that makes you something that makes you feel good. Because that's the thing is no matter, and another thing they talk about now, which is big in today's world, is anxiety and depression.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that stems from stuff like this because we get in our heads.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can figure out a way to counteract that, like let's say you don't like the way you look, go do something about it. I mean, if you want to start learning something new, go and study it. And
I have I like worked out before I started going to the gym. I'm gonna just tell a quick story. I was doing like abs and stuff here at home, and then I started journaling, and I have 3 forms of journaling. So I have one that is like it's one bad thing I had throughout the day. It's one good thing I had throughout the day, what I can improve on, and then what my goals are, my 3 goals for tomorrow. You know, that's one form. And then I have like a journal form where I just say whatever's on my mind in the journal. And then like that, I just only write like once a day in the journal. And then I have another form, which is me just being lyrically inclined and rhymes, because I like music and I love poetry and stuff. So like I take a lot of my personal wrath and anger and stuff, and I put that into the poetry, as a way to release the form, you know. Then I also go to the gym and try to keep myself busy doing podcast and writing and whatever else, you know.
Yeah. So while we're on story time, I'm going to tell you one of the biggest ones I deal with out of these is lust. And Isaiah here knows where it stems from. I'm not going to get into that whole detail there, but lust has been one of those things that has it can trickle down from generation to generation to generation, right? Until somebody officially breaks the cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Any of these sins can be trickled down to generation until somebody finally breaks that cycle. So one for me is lust, right? I will admit, like, I have a porn addiction. I'm not going to sit here and I'm not going to, like, sugarcoat nothing. But I can tell you is, like I mentioned, is there's things, like I was telling you, I'm going to talk to Jeff, right? So there's things that I never even thought of that led me down that path. Like, and that's why I keep reinforcing this so much, because knowing that certain things of how the way people treated me and what it triggered in my brain, I never would have thought that it would have been something that stemmed off of that. Like, that's the thing, is like, you have to understand that. And so I want everyone to know that, like, before you say something, truly think about it. I mean, even we mentioned, and there's a reason I keep mentioning you're out of your league or you're not my type, because Isaiah knows this story, but I'm not going to tell the full story. But I had a crush on a girl for like 6 hard years in high school, and I always got told I was never good enough. I would never amount to anything. I was not her type. And when you have something like that where you crush on someone so hard and then you get like beat down every single time. So ladies out there, even gentlemen, if someone asks you, at least go on one date with them. And the reason I say that is because my grandparents, like my grandpa thought grandma was the most beautiful woman in the world. Grandma turned grandpa down 3 different times before she was like, I'm going to just go on one date with this dude and shut him up. Like, he keeps asking me, he's not going to stop. I'm going to do it, and it's just going to be done. Like, one date, shut him up, tell him it wasn't really my thing. Guess what?
They got married. 3 kids.
That was actually, she'll tell you well, she can't tell you to this day, but she'll tell you, she used to always tell us until the day she died, that was the best date she ever went on. That was the best choice she ever made. So, ladies and gentlemen out there, if somebody asks you more than once to go on a date or hang out or something, even if it is just to get them to shut up, do it, because I guarantee you that action, they're going to remember that action for the rest of their life, compared to what road you could lead them down.
And advice for guys, if you get turned down, the best comeback line ever is, you're like the end pieces of a loaf of bread. Everybody touches them, but nobody wants them. I'm just kidding. Don't actually say that unless you do want respect. It works every time.
Okay, so you're talking about, I shouldn't tell anybody this one, but I used to have the best pickup line ever. So back when I was single, me and a good buddy of mine named Willie used to go bar hopping all the time. And Willie's an older dude. I'm still surprised to this day that Willie still is around. That man can drink anybody under a table. But Willie and I would always make bets, right? And he would put me up to the test. Well, I figured out throughout these tests that I formed a pickup line. So what you do is you walk up to this girl, and it only works once in the whole entire bar. If you strike out at that bar, you gotta go to a different bar, because if you use it on another chick, if that girl comes back, like, sees that, it ain't gonna work. So what you do is you walk up to her and you tell her that you're the most beautiful person in the world. 1 or 2, tell her that you have a bet with your buddy to get her phone number, and all you're there for is to get her phone number. And then if she tells you no, basically leave and say, hey, have a nice night. Right? And if you want to stay at that bar, stay at that bar. Because I guarantee you, here's what's going to happen. 1, you just called her out saying out of all of these girls in this bar, she's the most gorgeous. 1, if she doesn't see you move on to another girl throughout that bar, she's going to know that 1, you're telling the truth of her being the most beautiful. 2, or not 2, 3, like since you've already called her out and basically you're nice and said, hey, thank you, everything else, and respectful about it, by the time all those losers and dirtbags that just want to get in her pants, she's going to realize like, oh, hey, they want to get in my pants. This guy was actually nice and respectful to me. I might go actually give him a shot. Keep that in the back of your mind. I haven't had to use that line in like 6-7 years. So
you're married. You don't need to use it.
I can't tell you exactly how I worded it, but I can give you the general gist of how to play your cards right.
Anyway, so folks, as we wrap up today's episode, remember this. The 7 deadly sins are not just about big dramatic moments. They show up in every little decision that we make every single day. But here's the good news. We have power to change. Recognizing these tendencies. Thank you, Levi. Tendencies. And choosing the opposite virtue can lead us to a more fulfilling, balanced life. Thank you so much for joining or tuning in to the Fruitful Three Show. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with a friend. And as always, remember to stay humble, stay grounded, stay fruitful, and peace, love, happiness, and unity.
Rock on, dudes.